Barb Safaris has worked in the field of developmental disabilities for over 40 years. She has an MA in speech language pathology from Cleveland State and has worked as a SLP, support administrator, staff development specialist, and direct support professional. She is an Ohio ambassador for Charting the Life course, working with Ohio State University, national team member of Charting the Life course in Missouri, and a mentor trainer in the international learning community for person-centered practices. She serves as a board member of the Ohio Self-Determination Association and of the International Sibling Leadership Network. Her perspective as a sibling and professional support her passion to empower people with disabilities, families, and professionals. So without further ado, go ahead, Barb.
Thank you, Teresa. Good evening, everybody. You'll get the slides, or you've already gotten them. And I'm so excited to be with you. I love talking about what we as families and caregivers need to do to take care of ourselves. So I do work for the Family Resource Network of Ohio. We are out of the Nisonger Center down at the Ohio State University. We have a website, frnohio.org. We have lots of resources, lots of videos. So please check us out. And when you go to the website, it'll even ask you if you want to sign up to get notification of any kind of webinars or Zooms we're doing. They are free, so please sign up. And we have a Facebook page where we post stories where people are sharing how they're using Charting the Life course and how it's affecting their life. And we're very excited that we have wonderful support from the Department of Developmental Disabilities and the Department of Education and Workforce. So as Teresa said, I am a sibling. I've worked in the Cleveland, Ohio area for 49 years. And I had two younger brothers. My youngest brother, Nick, you see us in front of the Rock Hall of Fame, was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when he was 6 months old and I was 4 going into kindergarten. So quite honestly, I have tried to think about when I first became a caregiver, and I cannot remember. So I have probably been a caregiver for most of my life. So I know what it's like to be a caregiver. My middle brother, Jim, was hurt in an accident in his 30s, and it affected his ability to work and to get through his days without any help. And so he lived with me for well over a decade. So I've been a caregiver. My mother and my partner both had strokes 6 years ago, and I became the daily unpaid family caregiver for both of them. So, like I said, I can't remember a time in my life except right now when I have not been a caregiver. There are 4 handouts, and I'm going to go through them. These handouts, if you've heard anything about Charting the Life course, what I'm going to share today or tonight are resources that were developed by the Life Course Nexus at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and Elevance Health related to caregiver well-being. So these are just for caregivers to really stop and think about how we need to take care of ourselves so we can take care of our loved ones. And you all know the cliche, when we're on an airplane, we're always told, put your oxygen mask on first because you can't help anybody else if you are not taking care of yourself. And I'm not talking about big things. So I'll take you through these and encourage you to think about little things you can do. So in Ohio, we're trying to share information about Charting the Life course and how it can be used not only to support the people we love and families, but also how to take care of ourselves as caregivers. We believe that everybody has the right to live, love, work, play, learn, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. So that's all of us, not just people who get services, but all of us. We want everybody to have good outcomes. So if any of you have used Charting the Life course for your loved ones, your children, or your sibling, if there are any siblings on the call, we want everybody to have the life they value. We want people to have self-determination, which is control over decisions affecting their lives, and have the support to make those decisions. And we want families to be supported because we know that most people with disabilities live with their families. And so the families have to take care of themselves so that they can take care of their loved one. I can't remember what Teresa said, but if you have questions, please feel free to type them in chat. I'm sure she said that, but as I told Teresa, this is like my 6th or 7th meeting today. So I'm a little, did I say that or didn't I say that? So please feel free to type your questions at any time. If I don't see your question, Teresa is going to watch and she'll just unmute and say there's a question. So let's look at ourselves as caregivers and how we need to take care of ourselves. First of all, and I know this, I mean, my whole life was being a caregiver. So it was a great thing. I loved that I could help my family members. It was wonderful, but I'm not going to lie. There were days when I threw up my hands and said, oh my gosh, please help me get through this day because this is not a good day. So it can be rewarding, but it can also be very challenging. And we need to understand that taking care of ourselves is not an option. It is something we need to do. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to be intentional about it. And in my case, we may even have to schedule it. And again, we need to take care of ourselves so we can take care of the people we love. And, you know, if we're not good and we're not doing well, we're not going to be able to take care of the people we love. So, as I said, we want everybody to have a good life. So just because you're a caregiver doesn't mean you don't have dreams. 6 years ago, my mother and my partner had strokes within 2 months of each other. And I had to stop and say, okay, I'm going to take care of them. That I believe that that's at my core to take care of my family and the people I love. But I also need my life. And I kept thinking, and I've even articulated to my best friend, I can't just be a caregiver. I have to do something else. And so I had to really look at what are my dreams. And my dreams were not only that I took care of my family and made sure they had a good life and had what they needed, but that I got to do the work that I love, which is sharing with people, families, professionals. It's important that we have people who believe in us, and it's important that we have what's important to us. And none of us are going to have a lovely, wonderful, utopian life. We're going to have good days, we're going to have bad days, and hopefully the good days outnumber the bad days. And we have to be healthy and safe, feel healthy and safe, and we have to have control. So what keeps us from taking care of ourselves? Well, we're stressed. Oh my gosh, how am I going to do all this? The lack of time, and we've got to stop using the lack of time as an excuse, because we can take care of ourselves by just taking a few minutes. Initially, oh gosh, this sounds terrible, but I loved when the Ohio State University played football because I knew that my partner George was going to watch that game and I could go have a couple hours to myself. So looking for those opportunities, and not feeling guilty about, hey, I need me time. And, it could be to do whatever, I, in that time when I had a break and the Buckeyes were playing and he would say, do you want to watch the football game? I'd be like, oh no, that's okay. I don't want to disturb you. I don't want you to miss the game. And I'd be like, yes, I can go to the gym, I can read, or I can just sit in front of the TV and watch brainless shows. So we've got to not feel guilty about that personal time. And sometimes we're uncomfortable with that reversal of roles, like, oh, I'm not just a caregiver, but I got to take care of myself. And we don't want people to see us as being needy. Or if we ask anybody for help, we don't want them to think that we're burdening them. And for some of us, we may not know about possible resources to give us that break or respite from caregiving. So what can we do? I want you to think about these tools as I talk about them, and I'll ask you if you feel comfortable to type in chat what you might write down. I want you to think about your physical health, your emotional health, and your mental well-being. And be clear about what you need so you can share with others. A lot of times as a caregiver, I would say there's nobody who could do what I do. There's nobody who could do it. And I had to step back and go, wait a minute, there are a couple things people can do, and I can step back. And asking people for help very specifically, as opposed to, can you help me? But being very specific. So one example, and I may share it again during the call, is I was looking for someone who, if I was working and I was away from home for a day, I knew my mother and George could be okay, but I really was concerned about, can someone go in and just make sure they ate dinner? I didn't even care about their medications, because if they missed a medication, life was not going to end. It was going to be okay. And I asked a very trusted friend, and she said, your neighbor can help you. And I said, what do you mean, my neighbor? Who? And she told me, and I was like, I don't know who that is. This woman lives 3 doors away from me. And all I asked her to do was, can you come in for 10 minutes, maybe 15, and can you just microwave their meals? I'll have them in little Corningware crocks. Just ask them. I'll have a couple options in the refrigerator. Just ask them what they want. Just microwave it, give it to them, and make sure George has ice cream. And she was like, I can do that. And I was like, that's all you have to do. That's all I need from you. And it just gave me peace of mind. I didn't have to worry. Did they eat? Did they not eat? And she would text me, all's good. And I'd be like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And she would say, do you want me to remind them to take medication? I said, no, I don't want them to perceive you as someone coming in and checking on them. Just heat up the meal. And this is where they like to eat, in front of the TV. I don't care. So being clear just about something little that somebody else can do for you. Everything I'm sharing with you can be found on the web. It's free. You can download them. You go to the website, lifecoursetools.com, and then there's a tab that says library, and then go to exploring life domains, and you'll find a whole packet for caregiver well-being. So maybe some of you have used some of the tools with your sons or daughters or loved ones. But these are a little different. They have the same name, but it's the one page for caregiving. Or caregivers, I'm sorry. So the content is a little different. In the green bar, what we want you to think about is, what does caregiving look like? What's going on in your life as you caregive? Think about times when you feel that things are going well. What contributes to your well-being? You know, one of the things that contributed to my well-being was that my friend could come in and check if I wasn't there. And she didn't have to spend a lot of time. It was just coming, but she did. She was just so kind. I don't want to just run in the house and give them food. So she would sit and she would chat with them, or sometimes she'd watch the baseball, a little bit of the baseball game with George, whatever. She was just amazing. And then think about what's happening that makes you feel like things are okay. So the Ohio State University football game, woohoo, was wonderful for me. Connie coming into my house. When George and my mother first had their strokes, they were able to do a lot and they didn't need a lot of ongoing support. Now that changed over time, but when things were really good, it was because they could do a lot on their own. And they could read. So I could leave them notes and they still could read. And it was like, whoa, that's awesome. And then what did you do in the past to take care of your well-being? I like to have alone time, quiet time to myself. I was able to go to the gym. I was able to spend some time with my friend that we call each other sisters, even though we're not. Just to get away and to have some adult conversation that was different than what was happening at home. The orange section is, if I had time, what would I do? And this is a question that a lot of times families don't even think about. I've had families say they had respite or they got a provider, and the first time the provider came in their home, they had no clue what to do because they hadn't thought about, oh, if I have time to myself, what am I going to do? And, it might be something simple like being able to go to the grocery store and not have to worry about what's going on. Or it might be making a medical appointment or going and doing something like getting your hair done or a haircut or whatever that we tend to put off because we're so worried about time and responsibility and blah, 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 blah. And thinking about what did you used to do that was so pleasurable and maybe you aren't able to do now. So and that's a really important question to ask yourself. So let me just ask you, if you're comfortable, I'm not going to ask you to share anything that you're not comfortable with, because this is a pretty sensitive topic for all of us to think about. But if you had time, what would you do? I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to be able to go to a store and not be like, oh, God, I'll be home in 15 minutes. What would you do if any of you feel comfortable? Type in chat, or if you want to unmute, go, oh, somebody typed. Oops. Oh, no, nobody typed anything. Anybody got
Nothing yet, Barb, but I like to leisure read, like an actual paper book. I like to listen, but paper books are good for me.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. That was one of the things too that I missed, because I do like to read too, also, both the paper, but I also listen. And I thought, I haven't read a book in a long time. It was like, oh my gosh. Oh, people are typing, so let me look.
Yes.
Love it. To the gym or the hair salon, absolutely. And you know what? Going to the gym is not a luxury. If you don't take, for me, I'm only going to speak for myself, Tanetta, but going to the gym for me just works out that, that stress. And it's like, I feel so much better when I go to the gym. Or the hair salon. Absolutely. Yeah. Sarah says, I like to read and go to the park in the summer. I like to walk in the park. I like to take time to read my books. Oh, we are such a compatible group. Catch up on TV shows. Would regularly attend an exercise class. Every time I find a class, one of my children join an activity. Oh, that takes the place of my class. Oh, I'm so sorry, Kasha. I walk 3 miles after dropping my son off at school when it's warm out. Oh, Tina, I'm so glad that you have found a window to do something. Oh, I love it. Thank you for sharing. Swimming. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I like to do, it was go to church. And George and I would go to church together. And then he just didn't want to go to church. He didn't feel comfortable. And I would go initially, and then until one time he called me. I turned my phone off when I went into church, and he called me 6 times, did not leave me a voicemail. And when I got in my car, turned my phone on and saw he called me 6 times, I called him and he never answered the phone. And you can just imagine what I was thinking. After that, I even told my priest, I said, I can't come to church anymore. That was so stressful. Now, he was fine. And I don't know why he didn't answer his phone, but it scared the living daylights out of me. And I just thought, I'm not going to church anymore. That was too stressful. And I couldn't ask my friend because she went to church too. So it was like, I didn't want to ask her to come in and check him when she was doing something that was important to her. Anyway, it's amazing, right? What we have to think about and do. Oh, Alin, I hope I said your name right. You like to read, deep clean, and go for a walk. Okay, Alin, you have just burst my bubble. Oh, I like cleaning too. Well, okay, sometimes, but that was not exactly the top of my list. I love it. But isn't there something cathartic about cleaning? You have such a sense of achievement and accomplishment when you clean. So thank you all for sharing. I love it. And then the bottom blue section is, what are the things that you're doing that somebody else could do or that you could teach them to do? So, hello, Connie can microwave. I didn't have to be there to microwave their meal. um, and as both of them lost some skills, she did a little bit more. Never personal care. I never wanted her to have to do that. But, maybe she had to microwave the food and then do some other things in addition. But what can they do? What can somebody else do that you're not needed for? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but what can you release, even if it's something very small? Anybody got any ideas? Oh, somebody typed something. Hold on. Oh, yeah, occasionally cook an extra meal. Connie, God bless her, would say to me, Barb, I'm going to be cooking this for my husband and my son. I can bring some over? And I'd be like, no, you don't have to bring food, because I didn't want to impose more than that. But she was willing to do that. And she also was willing to do anything else. She goes, you want me to do dishes while I'm there? I said, no, there's a dishwasher. Just if you want, you can put the dishes in the dishwasher. You want me to do the laundry? No, I got that under, we got that. But yeah, what can they do? Ah, Tina, I love it. I definitely let my husband help out more, even though he doesn't do as good a job as I do. And that's probably one of the reasons we don't ask for help, because we feel like it's got to be my way, and stepping back a little bit and saying, you know what? It's working. It's okay. Thank you, Teresa. You said adding some, I always like to add something to my freezer. Awesome. Awesome. And somebody else. Oh, plan to meal list. Okay. What happens when you know they can do it, but they don't? Oh, Rebecca. I wish I had a good answer. I think sometimes you almost have to be there and back out and almost say, can you do this for me while you're there? so that they can do it. And then you can say, oh my gosh, you did it perfectly. Thank you so much. It's almost like encouraging them and showing them that they can and that it doesn't have to be exactly the way you say it. Now, I'm not talking about personal care things like if your loved one needs medical supports or anything like that. I'm talking about, is there anything anybody can do to make your life a little easier and give you a little bit of a break? We also have the trajectory, and if you've used any of the tools, you've probably used the trajectory. So whenever we talk about, yeah, help drop off my little guy at school. Yes, it gives you that much extra time that you can just have to yourself. Yes, absolutely. We always talk about what's your vision of your good life and what don't you want. So this is what the typical trajectory looks like if you're, thinking about your loved one and their goals. This is called the planning trajectory. But now I want to share with you a trajectory for looking at your caregiver well-being. So always we've got to know what's a good life. So a good life for me was that I went to the gym, I felt good, I went to church, I exercised, I had time to read, I had time to, spend with my friend, my sister, and that's a good life. And that I got to work because I said I cannot just be a caregiver. I've got to balance with something else. And then looking at, if you know what your good life is, that purple section, the top right box. On the left, now, what's your vision for your physical, mental, and emotional well-being? So, it can be take a, I take a walk when I drop my child off, or I try to watch a video on YouTube or something and exercise. Something. What's your vision of your physical, mental, and emotional well-being? I talk to, maybe you connect with a friend, or maybe you go to church, or whatever it is. And then, excuse me, what kind of information, navigation, or skill building would promote my well-being? So what do I need to do? What kind of opportunities with others would contribute to my well-being? So do you have a virtual community and you can check in, or do you Zoom with a friend, or do you attend a session like this? I don't know. And then what goods and services might help you? So, because I'm in that life stage where I have Medicare, my Y membership is paid for by my Medicare. And I have silver sneakers, so I don't have to pay. So that helps me a lot. I can go to the gym and it's free. But what other goods and services might help you? And think, some people have told me I used to be in a book club and I would like to be in a book club again. And a lot of things changed during COVID. So things that we thought we had to go to, people now do virtually. So even think about what can you do virtually to take care of your well-being. Oh, free library programs. Yes, 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 yes. And also think about goods and services like, school gives us a respite. Day programs give us a respite. Are there other things that your loved ones do where you can have some time that gives you time to yourself? Parent meetings, absolutely, and Autism Society gatherings are a great break. And isn't that the truth? That when you're together with people who have similar experiences, they may not be the same, but you don't have to explain everything, right? Because they get it. That's how I always felt when I was in a room with siblings. Even if their brothers and sisters were different than my brothers, I still didn't have to explain everything because people would go, oh, yeah, we get it. No problem. You don't have to tell us. You don't have to explain. We get it. Oh, and Teresa's posting, put in chat that you have two parent support groups, one virtual, one in person. Melissa says going to PTG meetings. Awesome. Yeah, because part of our well-being is that we feel that we contribute, not that we're just caregiving, but that we as a person are contributing and being part of groups like a PTG group or a autism support group or a book club or volunteering somewhere. That helps us with our emotional well-being. I love your suggestions, your thoughts. Love it. So what we don't want is just as important as what we do want. And that would be in the red box. So what don't you want to happen because I'm not taking care of myself? And I will tell you quite frankly, my biggest fear was what happens if I get sick? I mean, that was my biggest fear. And my mother and George had their strokes in 2018. Oh gosh, almost 6 years to the day. Yikes. And you know what happened? 2018 was wonderful, 2019, and then 2020 we had COVID. And my biggest fear was that I would get COVID. And I did not see people except my sister. My sister and her family don't live far from me. And she would often call, she knew what I was doing. I shared with her, which is also a good thing for our well-being. You know, let someone else know. And every so often she would call me and say, hey, how's George doing? My mother at that point was in a nursing home because I couldn't support her at home. And she would say, how's George doing? And I'd be like, good. And she says, did he eat? I said, yes. What's he doing? He's watching the baseball game. Why don't you come over and have dinner with us? And I would just go for an hour, maybe 2 hours. I was 15 minutes away. I gave George his cell phone. My cell phone was pre-programmed. And you know that even though I would tell him I'm going, I'll see you in a little bit. By the time I got to her house, he was calling me and saying, where are you? So I would say, hi, hon, I'm at Christina's. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, see you later. It was like, okay. And it worked. So, and then think about what's not good for your well-being. I'm looking. Autism Society has a mom's night out in Mahoning Valley and a dad's night. Oh my God, that's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And Kesha, I'm sorry, I don't mean to mispronounce your name, but I love that you're saying we get a good laugh out of some of the things that our children do. You know, I hated to talk about George and as he lost some of his memory and had some issues, but I felt comfortable sharing with my sister and we would laugh and I didn't get judged, you know, like, oh, because they would, you know, she would try not to laugh. She would be like, and I'd be like, you can laugh. It's funny.
It
But
is. It's so funny. And it's Keisha, but that's okay. I get
it's
Kesha, Keisha.
Keisha.
It's
Thank you,
Keisha. But
Keisha.
it is. It's a great time. And, we can comfort each other. We all understand. So I think we don't take it, seriously. And
Exactly.
at the time, sometimes it's traumatizing. But once we get there, it's a good laugh.
It is because when you're in it, it may not be funny, but when you reflect back, it's like, oh my gosh, do you know? And Christina took care of her mother-in-law who had dementia. So she was like, I know, I get it. And I'd be like, I know, I know. But you're right. You know, we can get a good laugh out, and that's a great release. That's a great stress reducer. Too many appointments. Yeah. Oh gosh. It's hard to do things that cost money. Absolutely. And I love that so many people wrote things like reading a book, watching your TV, and taking walks in the park, which I live in Lake County, and I didn't know there were so many parks in Lake County. And so that was one of the things that my sister and I did is we explored the parks, the park system, because we could go walk. And it didn't cost us anything. So great, great, great ideas. I love it, you guys. So thinking if, when we do a trajectory, we always look at what happened in the past that worked, what happened in the past that didn't work. So think about what have you tried to do to take a break or take care of yourself, and what worked, but what didn't work. I didn't have well, initially they could read, and so that life was good because they could read. Initially they both knew how to use a cell phone and could call me, and my mother lost that ability. My mother didn't even realize who I was, so there was a lot of changes over time, and so we had to change a lot of things to make them work. And then in the middle, as we move forward, what do we need to do? So maybe it's, one of the hardest things for me was that first call I made to a friend that I trusted. And I knew she would be a good helper, but she had retired to help her daughter take care of her grandson who had just been diagnosed on the spectrum. And I called her and asked her, do you know anybody who could help me? And I'm willing to private pay. And she said, she's the one that told me your neighbor. And I was like, what? And she goes, I would help you. I said, no, I'm not asking you. But that first step of having to ask her for help was the hardest thing I had to do. And then I was like, why didn't I ask people before? She was amazing. And I love it. Tina said, even playing your favorite music while cleaning is a good time for me. The other thing that I found was I could put the YouTube on the TV music, and I could just, make selections and it would play music through the day. And that was so calming to George and my mother. And that gave me a respite because I could leave them listening to music and maybe go do something. So,
Barb, I know you said asking for that help as the caregiver was one of the most difficult things.
yeah.
Do you have recommendations if we see another caregiver who needs support, how to approach them?
I think one of the things that I have learned from other families as I've shared my journey and experience is helping people realize that all they have to do is start by asking for something small. So you don't feel like you're imposing. So even if it is, can you pick up my child? Can you pick up a gallon of milk for me? Why? Because the person that's helping you is now like, oh, I can do something for you. And maybe they'll say, is there anything else I can do? I also with families, and we'll get to it if we have time, is thinking about other families, because maybe you can swap. Maybe you can help me and I'll help you. So I can take your kid to something, and can you come and sit with my kid for an hour while I go to a doctor's appointment? One of the things that I let slip was I needed 3 surgeries. Now, they were not life-threatening, so please don't. But I kept telling the doctors I can't do it. I can't, what's the recovery take? And they're like, oh, you can't, you'll be in pain for X and you won't be able to do Y. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm a caregiver. And the one was cataract. So it was like, okay, so I can't see real good for a while. But the other one was a little more important. And the doctor said, I'm giving you 3 months. We're going to schedule it, figure it out. And I was like, what? So, we can't overlook our own. And what can they do? Like, I had friends who would say, can I drop dinner off? Or I'm going to go to a restaurant you like. How about if I pick up dinner for the two of you and bring it? Something little, and then see what the response is. So often we feel like you got to do everything. You got to fill my shoes, and no one's going to do that because we're good. And we're the family, but what can they do? So maybe coaching people to think of, what's something little that somebody else can do, and you can ask them to help you. I ramble. I'm sorry. Okay, so once we figure out what we want to do for our well-being, we can use this integrated support star. And you see that there's 5 points, 5 areas. And in each area, we're looking at what are my current supports, and maybe what are the supports my loved one needs. So personal skills, abilities, and knowledge for me. Think about for yourself, what are your skills? I think I'm a good presenter. So that was something I was important to me. I want to continue to present. But when I looked at George, his strengths were he could be alone initially. He could be alone. He could use his cell phone. He could use his laptop. Oh, and then he lost that ability. But anyway, he could use his laptop. He could use the remote. And I say that because initially and eventually that was a hard thing. For technology, one of the things, and I'll speak to my mother and George versus my tech, they could both use cell phones. My number was programmed. But my mother and George did not realize that 3 a.m. was not the middle of the day. And the first time my mother woke up at 3 a.m., she put the TV on as loud as it could go, scared the living daylights out of me because I thought someone was in my house. And I jumped up, ran downstairs, and she was sitting in her chair. And she looked at me and she goes, "Where's lunch?" And I said, "It's 3 o'clock in the morning." She goes, "It's 3 o'clock." And I said, "But it's morning." So I found a clock on Amazon that said today is Wednesday. It said 3 o'clock, and it would say either night, morning, afternoon, evening. And so they could read the clock. And I also could set it for alarms, like time for lunch, time to take your pills. And it cost me $60. It was the best $60 I spent because I didn't have to nag them. They could look at the clock and they would say, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock in the morning." Yep. And it would go off and they'd be like, "Oh, it's time for me to take my medication." "Oh, thank you. I don't have to remind them," and be a nag. So relationships, what relationships did I have that could help me? What relationships do they have? Now, unfortunately, with my mother and George, they were both older and a lot of their friends had passed. So, my mother's circle, my brothers had passed away. My mother's circle was very small. It was me. My name was coming up for almost everything. She had a couple of godchildren that were in their 40s and 60s, and they would call her, and I would say, "Please call your godmother." One lives in Colorado, the other one lives an hour and a half away. And they did. And that was something they could do that I really asked them, can you please call? And they were like, oh yeah, we can call. And just her chatting with them was gave me like some relief. So something simple as making a phone call. And hold on, I'm checking chat. The playlist, friendships with parents who have the same experience. Yes, friendships with parents who have the same, because you don't have to explain everything. That was even with my sister, because she took care of her mother-in-law who had dementia. She, she knew. She would be like, yeah, we know. And I'd be like, yeah, you do. You do know. And then community-based. So what's out there? The library has programs. Maybe the community center has something that you want to learn. And I'm not, maybe you want to go to just one class on something. And can you ask somebody to, do something for you so that you can get away for an hour and a half? And then, of course, services and, school, camp, activities that your loved ones can go to, and it gives you another time that can be yours. So please remember, take time for yourself, even if it's small. Sometimes people have told me just waking up earlier than everybody else and having that 15 minutes or 30 minutes before, the world starts. And just having that quiet time for whatever you want to read. I've had people tell me they meditate, they pray, they journal, whatever it is that helps you with your well-being. It's got to be intentional. You're not going to get a break if you don't really think about it and make it be intentional. And start small. Don't think about, I want to get away for a weekend. What can you do? I love the idea of after I drop my son off, I go walk, because that's your window of time. Say it, share it with people. It was funny. My sister, George called her one day and said, it's Barb's birthday. What can I get her? And she said, how about a spa day? And he was ready to pay for a spa day for me and her to go together. I saw that he had called her, and I watched the phone because I wanted to make sure if anybody called him and he didn't answer, especially family, that we called them back. And I did say to her, I see that George called you. Do you mind? And she said, oh, he wants to surprise you. I told him a spa day would be nice. Well, my sister did not know up to that point that a spa day is mortifying to me. I would not appreciate it. And so I became hysterical. Oh my God, did he pay for it? I was just like, please tell me he didn't spend money on something that I'm not going to like. So, say what you want. I would love to be able to share it and ask. Make sure you think of small asks that people will then feel good that they can do it. And then maybe they won't be hesitant to offer help because they're like, oh yeah, I could do that. So take breaks as often as you need. Choose a place that's comfortable for you. My recliner, let me just sit in my recliner and have some quiet time. I love this one. Treat yourself the way you would treat a good friend. Practice breathing or mindfulness. I never did that, but anyway, it might work for you. And seek support from someone you trust. My sister was my sounding board.